scrolling down to Obar Nesopichala. I see his little light on and him waiting patiently. I see him in the chat room. So we're getting Oba on the line. Betcho Oba.
Blessings. How are you today?
I'm doing. It's another day in Babylon, but all is well.
You know, now I hear you perfectly well, but your entire intro was nothing but breaking up.
I know. I tell
That's
you.
weird.
Well, you know, in a way it's weird, in a way it's not. You know how you always relate things to Odu, and as the Odu stated at the beginning of the year, they talked about weather. Well, I looked at the solar flare. I looked at the solar flare activity, and it has been quite high. So I've noticed. Yes. So I've noticed that since we had that big solar flare that happened a couple of weeks ago, and you said that your cell phone went down, well, we've been having like all of these little miniature storms, and the technological aspects have been a little funky. So there you have it.
I hear you. I hear you.
Indeed, Oba. So how before we get started with the show, how's everything going in Miami?
Well, I'm very tired. I'm all sore from the CLBA farm project down here at the south end of the county. We're still developing stuff and, you know, brought in a truckload of soil and doing the mixing and getting ready to start planting if the weather allows me to do so. We'll get into it pretty soon, but this week looks lousy. But we definitely needed the rain, which is good. We're almost ready to go as soon as the weather straightens out. And we'll kick that in, so we'll have a lot of things to report for next month. You know, we'll get some video on what we're doing and what have you. That'll be bringing that fun part back into the equation. Of course, we're going to have, like you well said, we're going to have an interesting, very interesting program where I've decided I've never really spoken about Christian witchcraft in public.
I'm sorry. I can't wait till that show. It just makes me laugh because I know we're going to get down, so I'm excited.
Yeah. So I'm going to have a lot of fun talking about that, and I highly recommend it. That's something that nobody ever even considers or talks about. So trust me, it will be a very, very interesting program. And we're going to have, of course, the lectures coming up. So one of them is going to be the necklaces, the collares, the leques, and the other one is going to deal with Lukumi marriage. And those are also going to be good lectures that contribute knowledge. So if anyone wants to be part of it, by all means, you can start emailing and reserve your space. You can do it as of today. You can start and we'll be soon posting the deadline for registration. So but at least send those emails if you're interested in any of those two lectures. Those are paid lectures. Those would be $35 lectures at 2 hours thereabouts. And that's it, because I covered the whole importance of both things, the collares and the marriage, not just the procedures or the processes. So if you want to learn something, take the lectures. And of course, we're going to continue to have some fun with this Eglin series. And we've got wonderful emails and the program. People are certainly learning something new, and that's the goal. That's what we're trying to shoot for. And today's program, of course, we're going to hopefully throw some good ones in there as well. As you know, it's also a topic that nobody really talks about, and it's a very critical. It's not even important. This one is critical if for anyone who works the practices the faith and it is doing readings for people. Those diviners really need to be aware and get up to par with what's going on, because my sense is, the more I talk to the younger generation, is that they're so geared up, so focused on this learning divination via somebody told me so, that this Odu speaks about this, or they're going through internet blogs asking questions and then they get these random answers, or just outright buying whatever book is out there and reading it and absorbing the information as a matter of fact. And what I observe in that scenario is that none of those resources really teach you how to protect yourself from harm. And that comes with oral training, that comes from time and experience with experienced diviners and so on and so forth. It's not up there. And since we've got a interesting new generation that doesn't want to, in most part, take the training as serious as it should be, they're missing a critical component here, and that is how to safeguard thyself while you are practicing and doing rituals for others. And we're going to tie this conversation, like we talked about, which was very important, tie this into the Egun series, because we've been talking about different types of the Abiku types, and how these different types of Eguns, the spirits, which are really disturbed spirits, they're not in their best state, how they can impact in serious ways. And this idea that just because you're a diviner and you cast your shells or your opale or what have you, and you do this reading and you interpret the Odu for the person, and the accuracy may be there and all that is great, and then you kind of take for granted. You move from diagnosis to remedy, and then you mark the remedies, and then you perform the rituals and what have you. And there's this tendency to ignore, really, how that could boomerang, or how can that have chilling effects on the priest or priestess, or those that are within their own iglesia, their own household or space where this is being done. So that's what we kind of want to tie this conversation to that. These spirits, these intruders, really, these invasive negative spirits. And we're going to go beyond diagnosis and remedy. We're going to go into how to safeguard the diviner and the diviner's home and those that live in it and others that are there. And sometimes diviners are doing readings back to back. They're doing a reading and there's another 3 people sitting in the living room waiting to get a reading. So we have to understand that there's this possibility that any of these people that are there at the same time, one of them could be a carrier of one of these Abiku type of Eguns. And, you focus on that one person and you diagnose it accurately, and you tell them, now you know how to get rid of that, that spirit that's harming them. And but the ritual's not done yet. The person just gets up and leaves, and you schedule the ritual and what have you. And one tends to assume that that negative spirit went home with the person. And then you call up the next reading. Okay, come on in. You're next. And you move on to the next reading. Without realizing that there's this potentiality that egun did not leave with that person. That egun could have just stayed inside your house. Or that egun could just be standing right outside the door of the house, waiting for one of your clients to leave. As soon as one of these people leave, it'll attach itself to them. So it gets really difficult.
You know, it gets really complicated. And Oba, as I'm listening to you, and I'm always thinking and breaking things down. I think people are, and this has nothing to do with tradition. This is just the structure of the society that we live in. It doesn't matter what tradition you're in, but that we do these rituals, we do ceremony, and then we compartmentalize our lives. It's like we take off the aleo or the priesthood hat and we hang it up, and then we go home and things of this nature. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the basics are not taught with most people. Because to me, and we've had these conversations off air, the basics of any indigenous tradition, if you will, from my perspective, is not the ritual and what the elders know, if you will. It's about learning your skills as an individual, meaning like if you're clairaudient or clairvoyant or clairsentient and you learn how to hone those in and you learn metaphysics of what is really around you, you have your common sense is a little keener. It's a little better than if you go into a tradition. You learn about these spirits. You learn that you can bring them down in these ceremonies and yada, yada, yada. And then you have the festivities and you take that hat off and then you go home. No, these energies are constantly laying on top of our own. They're everywhere. They go back into the ethers, but they don't dissipate. They're here all the time. You see what I'm saying? So yeah. It's like people don't live with their senses turned on all the time. And I'm not saying 100% because you would literally be a maniac. But what I'm saying is to not turn off your gifts or to find out what your gifts are, to use them to your advantage in your everyday practical life. Because if you're getting information and knowledge of your tradition, but you're compartmentalizing, you're not using it in practical ways, then as my grandmother says, a fool with knowledge is still a fool because it ain't helping you any. It's not empowering you. It's not protecting you or your family. And I think that that's a little bit of the problem.
Yeah. And we're rushed.
Yes.
That's the thing, you know. We're distracted. We're bombarded and distracted by a bunch of things constantly. And, you know, it's like here you are, you're a surgeon, and you're getting ready to operate somebody, and you got a scalpel in your hand, and you're getting bombarded by other distractions at the same time. And it's hard to stay focused, you see. Unfortunately, what we're doing is more dangerous than that because we're dealing with the unseen.
Indeed.
So, you know, this mindset, if you will, that distraction rules. Well, it shouldn't. You see? And I invite everyone that practices our faith and what have you, that or anything, a medium, a spiritualist, anybody that's doing these kinds of spiritual work where we're entering that realm, and once you enter it, hey, you know, you are literally putting yourself at risk because you're entering an unknown space. And every person that comes in for a reading, even if you know that person well, even if it's a person that frequently comes in for readings and you kind of know their history and what have you, that it means nothing It means nothing. What it does tell us, and I speak by experience here, is that every time you go and start to do a reading, you're entering the unknown. You're entering whatever space, whatever baggage may be attached to that person at that moment. Every time someone comes into your home or place where you do your readings, they're coming from the outside in. And that journey alone, they might have just drove by, and I've seen those cases. I'm pointing to real living cases, not theoretical. I've seen many cases of people just on their way to get a reading, they drove by a cemetery.
Get out of my head, because I was about
to. They drove by a
that.
cemetery, and here, and this thing just got something that was at the cemetery just attached itself to that person.
That's right.
On the way to the reading.
That's right. Well, it's funny you say that, because as you were about to say that, I said, Edwin was like, that's why we always tell you to cross the street. Whenever I walk past a cemetery, which I do not walk on the same side of the street as a cemetery, a hospital, or a jail, because Abiku is waiting, and especially if they know you can hear and see them and sense them, they recognize that, and you are very viable to that. And also, this also applies to the story that I was telling you the other night when I spoke to you. I have a neighbor who's up under me, who is about to die. Iku is roaming around in my building. And the girl says to me, and he's an older man, I've always checked up on him and things of this nature. Egun says, you better not. And I just am getting well. I wasn't feeling well for the past couple of days. Egun was like, you better not take your butt down there to do anything. We'll take care of it. Everything will be able to die, but do not go there unprotected, because we don't understand that when people are in transition to leave, that Iku, all of these things are hanging around and can attach with you. So you have to go strapped, literally. So, Yeah,
the idea is you have to have all your portals on lockdown to make sure that whatever the transition that this person is going through, that all of those, like we spoke of in the previous program, that person's spiritual core is evolving, and all of the spirits in that core are systematically releasing themselves, right, and moving on, detaching, if you will. That person is an open portal at that moment. Any baggage that the person may have, you could have a person there that's moving on, but you don't know how solid, how calibrated, how balanced that person's spiritual core is. You don't know that. And so what happens is, what about if that person has one of these Abigu types that's been sitting with that person for life, or a more recent attachment, is it? The mere fact that it attached itself, if anyone's listened to one of our previous programs, will know that there is an open possibility here of that attachment jumping over and trying to attach itself to the next person, the living. And so you're walking into dangerous space, a contaminated space. And you better make sure that your eguns, that your spirits, and that your ancestral core, that you are on lockdown, so that your portals, no portal is open at that moment. And what happens is this. Let us assume that, and let's take this example, you live in an apartment building, right? So, you're on top of this guy somewhere, right? So there's nothing that that can stop. In other words, the idea of to shut down the portals is not just your human body.
It's my whole apartment.
It's your apartment. You know what I'm saying? It's the building.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, it is.
Those attachments are just running through everybody's apartment and saying hello here, okay?
I'd say.
They're roaming the building.
They sure are, and that's why Yamaya was like, ooh, okay, you will not be visiting anyone. Make sure you lock down your apartment and do this and this to your door, and then when he ibaye, you do this, this, and this, and then you walk around the block. Oh, yeah, I got it on lockdown. I'm ready. Absolutely, Oba.
Yeah. So, that's the other thing people have to take in consideration, It doesn't mean anything. You can walk in there and say, hey, look, I covered myself up. I'm charged up. My battery's charged. My exams are calibrated. I'm in good standing. Let me go say hello. Well, the fact is that you don't even need to go downstairs and walk it right next to this person. That thing is roaming the buildings. So even your apartment needs to be on lockdown. And you want to make sure that if that thing gets past your front door, it keeps on going. It's like, hello, it's just checking you out. It keeps on going. Yeah. It's like there's an Odu. There are Odus in divination, and Vifa divination that teaches us this. It's usually characterized in the metaphor of Iku is coming to visit, right? Death comes to visit, and if you got your strategy laid out correctly, your hopes is that it's going to visit, it's going to knock on the door, and it's going to walk in the house. It's going to say hello, but then, you were told to, let's say, to have some food there that death likes, So death will come, I'll go, oh, gee, thanks, muffins. We'll go eat the muffins and leave. So sometimes it is allowed to enter. Sometimes it is a complete and outright shutdown so that it cannot enter, right? So it just misses the door and keeps on moving. Now, the problem here is you're in an apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
So, common sense tells us that not everyone in this apartment building is in any kind of a member of some kind of indigenous religion that quickly recognizes that death is going to visit the building and everyone should prepare so that everybody's on lockdown. So that many people living in this building are vulnerable, and you can't stop it from you can't cover everyone's back, but you certainly got to cover yours.
Indeed. Well, yeah, I basically have to do the same things that I did when I moved into my brownstone. I literally set, borders in a grid from the bottom all the way up to the top of my building with certain materials of the earth, and I had to do the same thing on my block. And I literally took a legba and etchu, and I was a yawo. I dressed in all whites. People in the neighborhood know. They know who I am and who's coming, and all the old folks know, and they're glad I got it on lockdown. I had them in my hands, and I walked them around in my neighborhood. I'm like, yo, this is the deal. This is what it is. And I did what I had to do, but I had to do that, and I'm going to have to redo that again when, my beloved friend, because he is a friend, and it's very difficult because you have that emotional attachment to this human being. But if you know the metaphysics and you understand the spiritual ramifications to you, the living human being, you have to do what you have to do. So I'm going to have to I'm going to have to lock it down again, and I would imagine because we are friends, he knows that I'm a priestess of Yamaya and what I do, and he actually asked me for a blessing. things of this nature when he's not in the state that he is now, but he asked me to do something for him, and Yemaya was like, no, pull away, don't get involved with that. I'm going to have to do something else for him when he crosses over, because I know that he's going to come to me. I know that him being an Egun, he's going to come to me, and I'm going to have to do some other things. And that's a whole other show. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. When you live in New York, it's what it is.
Well, the problem is this. No matter where one lives, when you're in that hot zone, whether it's walking into a hospital, another place, of course, is a cemetery. That's common sense. But hospitals are, totally infested by this. If you walk into a prison, and we're going to have a program on this, that's also an issue. You just don't walk into a prison or by a prison, because that's just the same as the hospital in terms of spiritual contamination. If you people don't think about this, but certainly in Lukumi we're always thinking about this, and that is any sections, or you have these mental health hospitals.
Oh yes. Mhm.
Where all the crazies are, right?
Mhm.
Hell no, you just don't walk into those places either, because that's totally infested in there as well. That's very contaminated. And I've had clients which are social workers and what have you, and in the field of psychology, that my goodness, that's their work, right? They're walking into that contaminated space day in, day out. That's their profession. And I've gotten a lot of working experience, not just the theoretical, on the dynamics of that,
Mhm.
Of how I've even had some that had to retire from working in these places, because they're just getting wiped out. And that is, there's just no way in those particular cases, there's no way that we can strengthen the person enough to withstand that kind of energy.
Indeed.
The presence of that. The mix is just too intense for them, meaning that they don't have in their spiritual core, they do not have the spirits that are with the authority to override those kinds of spirits, which are really just negative spirits. So in some of these cases, they've had to really, stop working in hospitals and go find themselves, either go teach psychology or something, in a university, but stop working in the field in that direct sense. Other cases, we know that there's Odus there that tell us whoever has mental health issues, it says to the priest or the priestess for life in their itai comes out, you should not handle any of those cases, meaning that priest or priestess has that vulnerable, and that's it. It's set in gold. I mean, that's it. That's your vulnerable, and that's your weakness, and there's nothing that you're going to be able to do to remove the dangers of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, hey, don't even do a rogation, don't do a cleansing, don't do anything for someone who has serious mental health problems. Other people that are saying like, hey, you're going to have a field day, work all those cases all you want. So it depends on each individual spiritual core and the makeup of their odus and what have you, where we understand what the parameters are and what each person's weaknesses are, so each person avoids them. Now, figure if you don't know them, if you've never really gotten in real step with it. I mean, my goodness, I can tell you one case. I dealt years ago in one case with a friend of mine who who had been living with this girl, a new girlfriend. He moved her in, and he was living with her, I don't know, maybe 4 months, 5 months. And it turns out that the girl had one of these abiku egums that would come through. She would get possessed with this thing. And, you know, we already did this program about these egums being sexual predators, right?
Mhm.
This guy called me up 4 or 5 months into their relationship, and he was like blown away because while he was having sex with the girl got possessed with the predator egum.
Been there, done that, seen that before, and let me tell you.
It wasn't It wasn't a trance. I'm talking about the egum came down.
Yeah.
Possession.
Yes, you see the egum. The person transforms.
No. I'm not talking about you see anything. I'm talking about it came down like in a misa. Okay, that egum possessed this woman in the middle of the sex.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, shut up. Okay, yeah. Now, no, that has not happened to me.
No. I'm talking about outright possession.
Ooh, wee.
And here's this man having sex with this woman, and all of a sudden, like, what is this?
Wow.
Okay? And I'm talking about the angry ones there going like, hello. You know, not good.
Shut up, Oba. That's crazy. Yeah, no. Yeah, I've seen egum.
No. Seeing it or whatever. No, this goes beyond what we talked about in our program.
Yes,
I'm talking about, here's a case where the girl literally got possessed. That egum came through her. Here I am, guy.
Ooh, wait a minute. Let me draw some crosses on the bottom of my feet right now. Okay, and on my head.
And I had been working for 2 weeks with a lot of very charged cases, and I was already feeling I was down. My battery was not all charged up. Okay, and I had decided that same day, it was a Saturday, and I remember I had decided that, you know what, I'm going to stop working for a couple of days and do some baths and stuff and recharge because I'm really down and I was dragging, you know. And here it is, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I get this call from my friend. Emergency. Here I am at home, and this egum has possessed this woman, and I've been trying to get rid of it for the past 1 hour, and I can't. And he's going like, you know, so I said to him, okay, you got to be kidding me, you know. I said, look, I was sleeping. He woke me up. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Listen, you know, did you do this and did you do that? He says, yes. And every time that egum, it's a male egum, and it has laughed its way through everything. Literally laughs at me. Now, I forgot to say, let me step back a little bit. About 2 weeks prior to this incident, I had gone to his home, and I had buried something right at the doorstep in his front door of his house. And only him and I knew. No one else was around. Okay. And I said to him, this you got to keep quiet, secret. Just leave this thing there, okay? And I buried it. So anyone that would visit him would have to, you know, step over this thing that I had buried. And I said, what I'm putting here is so that any kind of these predator type, these abiku types egums tries to come through this front door, it may put his feet inside the house, but count your seconds. In a matter of minutes, that thing is going to fly right out the door. Okay? They're not going to be able to withstand what's in here. They're going to have to leave. They can stand out on the sidewalk, but certainly not inside this house, right? And so 2 weeks later, he calls me at 3 o'clock in the morning with this incident, right? So I said to him, what's going on? And he says, well, no. I said, okay, tell me, what are the characteristics? What is she displaying? He says, well, it did this, it's doing that, it's done this, it's done that. I said, okay, fine. Where's she now? He says, oh, no. Let me tell you something. As soon as we were right by the kitchen, and that thing came down. Possessed her. And he says, in under a minute, this woman raced out the front door of the house. And as soon as she put her feet out over the doorway here and just stepped outside, she dropped right in the front lawn of the house. She's out in the yard, in the front door, in the front yard. She's just laying there. It's not going anywhere. It's just there. And I've done the cascarilla, and he says, I even had some holy water in here. I threw the holy water on her. You know, he says, I'm out of goodies here. I mean, that's it. I'm out of bullets. This thing just sits there with this very deep, almost theatrical voice, you know, like something out of one of these Hollywood films, you know, and just there. I mean, and for the past, I remember him saying something like, for the past 15 minutes or so, it's just, this woman is just laying face down on the ground, has not moved, has not made any noises. I can tell that it's not like she's passed out. This thing is still there, but it's just on the ground, facing down. And that's it. I don't know what else to do with this thing. So I said, okay, all right. I was like maybe 10-minute drive from his house. So I get out of bed. So I'm not really prepared, like I said. My battery was low. But what are you going to do in a case like this, right? So I had nobody else to call at that time to kind of help me back me up on this. So I take it upon myself. I get in the car, and I took an instrument that I have for this kind of phenomena, right? Let's call it my little magic wand. And sure enough, I show up at this man's house, and here's this woman dressed in black. She was still face down on the ground and not responding. So I remember hitting her by the feet, just tapping her feet with my little magic wand there, and then, of course, she moved and made some noises, like a little growl, like it was an animal, you know? So I said to him, I told you that thing was still here. There's nothing wrong with her. She's just still simply possessed. I said, okay, first thing, go bring me, you got any more cascarillas? He says, yeah. I said, oh, go bring me 2 cascarillas over here. So he runs in and brings the cascarilla. And what I did is that I drew a circle around this person's body, on the floor, and did my markings. And then I said, okay, hey, fool. I know you're here. You're not fooling me. I know who you are. Now, what you doing? And we're going to stop this right here, right now. Here's where it ends. And I started addressing this phenomenon. Well, sure enough, I kicked it out of her body, right? But then that thing was trying to get me. It was trying to, in other words, it was trying to switch over to me and take over me. So I go, great, all right? I knew I was weak. I shouldn't be here doing this. I'm doing this out of no choice, and now I'm having to really struggle trying to keep this thing from taking over myself here, right? Mm-hmm. So everything was cool. It was fine. They snapped the girl back to reality. And I said, okay, you guys are fine, but I really need to go. Because I was really starting to have a struggle trying to block that thing from taking over me. To get in the car, drive home. And, I kept feeling this intense energy trying to come in, right? It was like just charging in and not being able to break through and then pulling back and then coming back in again and pulling back, right? Trying to break through and couldn't break through. So you could feel that intense energy coming in, and then you're blocking it, and it's pulling back, and it's like, okay, now we've got a little war going on here. Let me tell you something. By the time I got home, and I started cleaning myself off, then that thing really intensified. And I was on total, full charge, trying to block this thing from taking over. It was really draining the little bit of energy I had in the first place. And I was having a real hard time blocking it. It got to a point that I knew that I wasn't going to be able to keep sustaining those hits for any prolonged time. I could feel it. I knew it. So I picked the phone and I called my mother. And I said to her, I need to get over here now. This is what's going on. And this thing, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to hold this thing back. And literally, it took her showing up. And then us, pulling our sources together to oust this thing. That thing left me in La La Land for months. It was that powerful. It took me months to get myself to balance. It was incredible. So that's one example. So the lesson here is, is not just shutting down your portals, is knowing how charged, how ready are you spiritually to take on a hit like that. Because you don't know the force of that beast until you encounter it, until you go head on into it.
That's true, Oba, and I wanted to make a comment when you said that, because as priests and priestesses out there who have itas, we misinterpret information. For instance, when the Oba tells us no one can touch your head, or you can't touch people's head, or you can't make everybody, you can't read just anybody, you better come to your head Orisha and throw the coco and ask me first. A perfect example. Why? Because the person who is coming through the threshold of the Ile might be bringing Abiku, something that can attach to you, something that can attach to your family. And when it comes to your Ori, the person may be older, and you may respect him, but you better believe if you don't listen to your Ita, and you don't listen to what Orisha is telling you, and you don't throw, you could pay the price of what that person giving you a rogation has to offer. And I don't mean that in a good way. So sometimes, family, we have to really think critically about some of the things that are said to us and not misinterpret, because a lot of these things that are told to us in readings in Ita, whether you are even people who are Aleos, when you're sitting in the shells and they're telling you not to do certain things, it's because they don't want certain things to attach to you, and I think people misinterpret that. So you're absolutely on point, Oba. We have to be very careful.
Now, that's one example. Another example that I can give you is years ago. It was a Friday night event. My former wife used to work in marketing in a bank, and they were going to have their bank events that evening with their customers and whatever. So they were going to have like a little happy hour, with all the little finger foods and all this kind of stuff. And of course, she was in charge of making sure that all the catering and that everything was set. And here I go. I had one more reading to do that day, and it was in the afternoon. Well, the gentleman arrived late, pretty late, beyond the scheduled time. And I said, well, what the heck? My head's saying turn them away and reschedule. But then, away from that message, the human me, I turned around and said, oh, my God, well, you know what? I still got some time to do a quick reading for this person. And I was just, being kind because the person lived about an hour's drive away, and so I, try to help him out. And I said to my former wife, I got enough time for this. I should have enough time for this. Settle down, you start getting ready and whatever. So I, set everything up, and I sit down and I do the reading. And I get this Odu, and he came out in good fortune in Ire. And I know the Odu very well, and comes in Ire and so on, something. It just didn't add up. And it's those kinds of combinations where an experienced diviner knows that they're getting a false blessing. That it's a false Ire. And I'm going like, oh, no way. So here it goes. Back to what I always say. No matter who it is that you're doing a reading for, you never know what the baggage is until you throw those shells or the opale, isn't it? In real time. And I said, okay. So I very quickly, cut to the chase. I went right to the point. I said to this gentleman, hey, this is it. This is what's been happening to you, ... And you have a negative male ego attached to you, which has been causing, the A, B, C, and I spelled that out, and I said, I have these things not happened to you already? And he says, yes. Now, this guy, the Odu's already telling me this individual's personality, which we're talking about a borderline, pretty much an atheist kind of guy, very skeptical about everything, just disbelieves everything, and so what the heck? I'm going like, first of all, I got the worst character type sitting in front of me for this kind of hardball issue. Then I'm sitting here with this guy with this negative attachment sitting in my reading room, and I've got a rush to get dressed and for this event. So time is running out. So I've got that pressure. Plus I got this thing sitting in front of me. So I said to the gentleman, look, you're here for me to tell you what your unknowns are, and I'm telling you what they are. Whether you believe them or not, that's irrelevant to me. I did my job. I told you what I see here. Now, here's the deal. My teachers always taught me that regardless of whether the person believes or not believes what you're saying in your interpretation, not to pay attention to that, because Orisha worship is about deliverance. It's about tangibles. So time will tell. Time will tell. And this is how disbelievers become believers. So I said, okay, I remembered that, and I said to the guy, look, here's the deal. Within the next 90 days, be extraordinarily careful, because you're going to be involved in a serious accident, and you're going to have serious leg injuries. You're going to lose your mobility here. If you're lucky, given the science and the technology that we have here, maybe they'll be able to do something for you, and you at least will be able to walk in the future. But you're going to be, first you're going to be bedridden for quite a while, and then at best you're going to be seeing yourself in a wheelchair, and if you're lucky, eventually you'll see yourself in crutches, and who knows what's going to happen after that. That depends on the technology. So this advice, this forecast was too far-fetched for this person's mentality. So at the end of the reading, the person, I got it out of him. I said, I know that you don't believe a word I've been saying, right? And he says, yeah, you're right. I don't. So I said, okay, this reading is over. The only thing I can say is go home, think about these things, and, rethink your position. That'll be your best interest. And by the way, do not drive. In fact, do not be inside of a vehicle on rainy days, these gray days, these winter-like days where you don't have this good lighting, good visibility, and especially in energy changes, meaning 6 o'clock, right, in the morning, 6 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, in those markers, in those quarters, if you will. Stay away from driving in those particular times, like, wait a half hour and then get in a car or something, but don't get caught in the street driving in a car around those particular time slots, because that's where you are at your most peak vulnerable moments. And be careful, specifically in cross streets, with traffic lights and stuff like that. Okay? If you get caught driving in those times, yes, be paranoid, and that'll help you. Okay? So to make the story short, the gentleman walks out of the house, leaves, and I get dressed. I'm rushed. I'm already running late. Get in the car with my wife, and I start driving towards Miami Beach. And when you get down into downtown Miami, right on the bay there, is the Miami Herald building, and you got to drive over this bridge, and that puts you right into these little islands all the way into South Beach. And that's the route I had to take. Sure enough, who ends up having an accident? I did. Where did I have this accident? At a cross-section, traffic light. One gentleman up on my left, as I was crossing over the Miami Herald Bridge, it started drizzling. And it was, almost 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and then, and it was a rainy day, and it was already dark. The lighting was, it was this perfect scene. It was the scene that I had described to this guy. And as I'm driving over the bridge, I get this thing, my Edmunds or whoever it was like, hey, get yourself on, slow this car down and get on the right lane. Okay, get on the right lane. I was on the extreme left lane. So as soon as that was possible, I moved over to the right lane. As I'm approaching Star Island, which is the first island up the causeway there, I'm looking at the traffic light. It's on green. Everything's fine. I really don't have any traffic behind me. There was some cars coming, but they were quite at a distance behind me, so that wasn't an issue. I had slowed down my speed, and I moved over to my right lane. Now, here's the thing: on the right lane, there's only one other lane space of raw dirt, of landfill, without anything stopping a car to going into the water. There was no barricades there yet. There are now. Today they've made them, but there weren't any back then. They just had these rocks blocking the water. That's about it. These large rocks. But any car could just bounce over those rocks and go right into the water where the cruise ships come in. So that gives you an idea how deep it was. So I'm driving, and all of a sudden I see this car run the red light. It was stopped at Star Island at the traffic light there, and yet the person decided to run the red light. And I see the car moving. Now this person, when you come off off Star Island, you can make a left turn onto your own lane and then go onto the highway, isn't it? In a safe way. The person does not do this. The person just went clearly across into the center lane, and here comes this car out of nowhere, which was speeding, flies right by me, and rams right into that car. As soon as he rams into that car, both cars locked into each other. They didn't bounce off each other. They locked into each other. And they cut across the highway. And here I am. I'm coming on the right lane. So as they cut me off, I had two choices. If I yanked the wheel on a wet pavement to the right, I was going in the water. So I had no choice other than to ram them. So I purposely jammed my brakes, cut my wheel, and made my car slide. So I hit them on the back bumper with my front bumper, just a little side hit rather than head on. The car, once I bopped them, I still had, my car started sliding, but I had it under control basically, and I managed to pull the car onto the dirt to get some traction. And as I'm getting traction, my car is still sliding, but I'm getting traction. Well, I stopped short of hitting a telephone pole and ripped it right off the ground. But that stopped me from going into the water. The car that I hit, that's where they broke apart. So the car that I hit, that unsnapped them. That guy went right towards the water, and his car got stuck on top of the boulders, swinging over, about to fall into the water. And the other guy bounced to the left, across the road again, and rammed some bushes and trees. And here comes a bus speeding, doesn't worry about this, just goes right through us in high speed. The bus gets entangled with the wire of the electrical pole. So now we have this live electrical wire sparking with its fire and just, jumping all over the roadway. And it finally loosened. It got disconnected from the bus literally dragged the pole away from me, and somehow that pole just bounced and just took out the car that was hanging on the rocks. Just smashed it right on the roof. Just fell right across the entire car. take the training as serious as it should be, they're missing a critical component here, and that is how to safeguard thyself while you are practicing and doing rituals for others. And we're going to tie this conversation, like we talked about, Dia, which was very important, tie this into the Eglung series, because we've been talking about different types of the Abiku types, and how these different types of Eglungs, the spirits, which are really disturbed spirits, they're not in their best state, how they can impact in serious ways. And this idea that just because you're a diviner and you cast your shells or your opale or what have you, and you do this reading and you interpret the Odu for the person, and the accuracy may be there and all that is great, and then you kind of take for granted. You move from diagnosis to remedy, and then you mark the remedies, and then you perform the rituals and what have you. And there's this tendency to ignore, really, how that could boomerang, or how can that have chilling effects on the priest or priestess, or those that are within their own iglesia, their own household or space where this is being done. So that's what we kind of want to tie this conversation to that. These spirits, these intruders, really, these invasive negative spirits. And we're going to go beyond diagnosis and remedy. We're going to go into how to safeguard the diviner and the diviner's home and those that live in it and others that are there. And sometimes diviners are doing...
Scrolling down to Obar Nesopichala, I see his little light on and him waiting patiently. I see him in the chat room. So we're getting Oba on the line. Betchonoba.
Blessings. How are you today?
I'm doing. It's another day in Babylon, but all is well.
Now I hear you perfectly well, but your entire intro was nothing but breaking up.
I know. I tell
That's
you.
Weird.
Well, in a way it's weird, in a way it's not. You know how you always relate things to Odu, and as the Odu stated at the beginning of the year, they talked about weather. Well, I looked at the solar flare. I looked at the solar flare activity, and it has been quite high. So I've noticed. Yes. So I've noticed that since we had that big solar flare that happened a couple of weeks ago, and you said that your cell phone went down, well, we've been having all of these little miniature storms, and the technological aspects have been a little funky. So there you have it.
I hear you.
Indeed, Oba. So how before we get started with the show, how's everything going in Miami?
Well, I'm very tired. I'm all sore from the CLBA farm project down here at the south end of the county. We're still developing stuff and, brought in a truckload of soil and doing the mixing and getting ready to start planting if the weather allows me to do so. We'll get into it pretty soon, but this week looks lousy. But we definitely needed the rain, which is good. We're almost ready to go as soon as the weather straightens out. And we'll kick that in, so we'll have a lot of things to report for next month. We'll get some video on what we're doing. Readings back to back. They're doing a reading, and there's another 3 people sitting in the living room waiting to get a reading. So we have to understand that there's this possibility that any of these people that are there at the same time, one of them could be a carrier of one of these Abiku type of Egungs. And, you focus on that one person and you diagnose it accurately, and you tell them, now you know how to get rid of that, that spirit that's harming them. And but the ritual's not done yet. The person just gets up and leaves, and you schedule the ritual and what have you. And one tends to to assume that negative spirit went home with the person. And then you call up the next reading. Okay, come on in. You're next, and you move on to the next reading, without realizing that there's this potentiality that Egun did not leave with that person. That Egun could have just stayed inside your house, or that Egun could just be standing right outside the door of the house, waiting for one of your clients to leave. As soon as one of these people leave, it'll attach itself to them. So it gets really difficult.
It gets really complicated, and as I'm listening to you, and I'm always thinking and breaking things down. I think people are, and this has nothing to do with tradition. This is just the structure of the society that we live in. It doesn't matter what tradition you're in, but that we do these rituals, we do ceremony, and then we compartmentalize our lives. It's like we take off the aleo or the priesthood hat and we hang it up, and then we go home and things of this nature. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the base
people are certainly learning something new, and that's the goal. That's what we're trying to shoot for. And today's program, of course, we're going to hopefully throw some good ones in there as well. As you know, it's also a topic that nobody really talks about. And it's a very critical, it's not even important, this one is critical for anyone who works the practices of faith and it is doing readings for people. Those diviners really need to be aware and get up to par with what's going on, because my sense is, the more I talk to the younger generation, is that they're so geared up, so focused on this learning divination via somebody told me so, that this Odu speaks about this, or they're going through internet blogs asking questions and then they get these random answers, or just outright buying whatever book is out there and reading it and absorbing the information as a matter of fact. And what I observe in that scenario is that none of those resources really teach you how to protect yourself from harm. And that comes with oral training, that comes from time and experience with experienced diviners and so on and so forth. It's not up there. And since we've got a interesting new generation that doesn't want to, in most part, take and what have you, that'll be bringing that fun part back into the equation. Of course, we're going to have, like you well said, we're going to have an interesting, very interesting program where I've decided, I've never really spoken about Christian witchcraft in public.
I'm sorry. I can't wait till that show. It just makes me laugh because I know we're going to get down, so I'm excited.
Yeah. So I'm going to have a lot of fun talking about that, and I highly recommend it. That's something that nobody ever even considers or talks about. So trust me, it will be a very, very interesting program. And we're going to have, of course, the lectures coming up. So one of them is going to be the necklaces, the collares, the leques, and the other one is going to deal with Look at Me marriage. And those are also going to be good lectures that contribute knowledge. So if anyone wants to be part of it, by all means, you can start emailing and reserve your space. You can do it as of today. You can start reserving. And we'll be soon posting the deadline for registration. So at least send those emails if you're interested in any of those two lectures. Those are paid lectures. Those would be $35 lectures at 2 hours thereabouts. And that's it, because I covered the whole importance of both things, the collares and the marriage, not just the procedures or the processes. So if you want to learn something, take the lectures. And of course, we're going to continue to have some fun with this Eggling series. And we've gotten wonderful emails